and that texture to our terrain. All of a sudden, look, it starts to look like real land. By scrolling through the thing, at the edges. Now, if it's a little bit butty spikiness of the hill, going to use up more and more process. Just create a world, and it will be quite. Come across to the paintbrush. This is how you can add textures. And if I just click edit textures and then add a texture, then I get this little pop-up box here. Now, if I click select, I can choose a texture to use as the base textures. And by scrolling through the list, one of them, texture field, you can choose one of spiky. And if you want to add a normal map, which is a texture field, you can choose one of these kind of purple looking ones, and that will give it a texture. But for now, I'm happy as it is. Now, before I click OK, if I just get rid of this, watch what happens when I add the first base texture to our terrain. All of a sudden, look, it starts to look like real land. And if you came right down, then it all of a sudden, look, it starts to look, add a second texture so that it then can kind of paint mountainous edges. I can find a texture and it would load here, and that way you would have access to do exactly the same. So you could create a canvas in Photoshop that's 512 by 512 with kind of a ice button, which is an add a tree, looking for a game object. So let's find a tree, and let's choose the conifer here, double click and add. Now we have a tree loaded in. Let's just add one more. Here we go, and get some palm trees. Why not? I mean, they're probably not going to look very good next to each other, but it's just as an example. Now, look at the brush size and look at the tree intensity. Also, look at the tree height. I'm going to bring that right down because I don't want the trees to be absolutely 100 meters in the sky. It won't look realistic. But if I click, I can place trees, look. If I zoom down, I can actually see, oh, too far. I can actually see the trees that I've created. It might be a little bit small. Let's make them bigger. Let's move over here and create some palm trees. There we go. So they're a bit bigger. And now let's add some conifers. Just having a think for a second. There we are. They're a little bit too big. Let's shrink them down a bit. There we go. And add it. And then if I increase the brush size, I can kind of paint some grass areas onto the texture. There we go, look. And it doesn't look fantastic. I'm just giving you guys a bit of a demonstration about the different things. What I want to do is go into the characters folder, into the first person controller, into preview. You can see the first person controller. However, they use a capsule and you need to move that up a little bit. Now it's also a little bit the actual camera is facing. And if we look at the game view now, this is what the camera will actually see when the game begins. Check this out. Let's go to maximize on play and click play. This is going to use, I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit because I'm hooked up to a bigger sound system. But now I can use my mouse to look around the world that we've just created. And let's just make a slight adjustment. I'm going to make the start position of my first person controller to be somewhere over here. Just double click.
Hey guys, Jimmy Vegas here, and Unity evolves over time. Over the many years it's existed, it has evolved in many ways. Some changes are drastic, some not so much. This change in particular I feel is drastic in as of 20 right here, which is the paint terrain. And underneath there we can see we have a little drop down menu. Now you may not have all of these options instantly. They may be kind of locked up as it were, but don't worry at all. So I'm going to go through each of the drop down menus here. So the first one here is create neighbor terrains, and in a lot of ways I think this is why this particular mechanic was changed, because this now allows us to have the extra terrains around. As you can see, we've highlighted different areas, so that is something that we could work with. Next one is raise or lower terrain, and that was usually the first option. So this principle works the exact same as the terrain as it was. So if you're a bit confused by it, don't worry, we'll explain it in a normal tutorial. But a great thing I've noticed here is we can see the little purple bump. And this little purple bump indicates to you how much or how little the terrain will change when you press it. So there we go. You can see that's how it's done it. And every time we press, you can see the purple outline indicates more and more. I think that is a nice, cool feature to have. And the same applies with all the other paint types. You can see there, we've got the different changes. And as soon as we do change it, we see exactly what it's predicted will happen. So that is how we can raise or lower terrain. Obviously, this will go into more detail on probably the next video of this playlist. Of Unity. So hit the grass, and there we go. We've painted our. So no matter what you do at this point, because you can set a layer. So you would click on Edit Terrains and Create Layer. Realistically, it doesn't really matter what you do at this point, because you can always change what that texture is. But I'm going to go for the grass one right there. So hit the grass, and then change what that terrains and create layer. Realistically, it doesn't really matter what you do at this point, because you can always change what that texture is. But I'm going to go for the grass one right there. So hit the grass, and there we go. We've painted our terrain, and that's how it would normally have appeared. The great thing about this is that we can change many different things. So if we click on the actual image itself, we can add in a normal map there. So if we go to our normal map, we can just drag and drop as we would normally do in the style that we do, but it gives us more options here. You can see we can change the normal scale to whatever you want it to be. Play around specular, metallic, and the smoothness. Didn't really have these options as they were like this in previous versions of Unity. So again, I think that is another positive from this change. Same principle will apply when you probably get to the next video, like I say, with adding different layers. So you would add a layer of, or rather create layer, and you would add in your various other textures, and then you'd be able to paint, as you can see, as you normally would.